We're on our way! Welcome to the Stiles Council, and it's a very, very happy one because myself, David Hartrick, and Christopher Nee are recording this literally the very second England have just done a job on Panama, haven't they, Chris?
Yeah, handled.
Yes, dealt with, punished. So we're gonna get into the game, just have a little chat about it all. But there's a couple of things I want to mention first, Chris. One of them will be Team Sheet Gate, but we'll get onto that in a minute. I just want to say a little something about Panama. I thought they're an absolute disgrace there, Chris. To be honest, that elbow on Lingard in the first half, as I said to you on our WhatsApp group, he doesn't go down clutching his head if that is accidental conduct. There's the fist in the face of Harry Maguire that was absolutely definite. There was the 2 penalties given and the 48 that weren't. There was the persistent double fouling with 2 players coming in sandwiching either side. Absolute disgrace in my eyes.
It was pretty shocking, particularly the first half. I thought the whole game kind of became a slightly shadow version of itself in the second half, but the first half they were, I think, to be honest, pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, particularly their treatment of Lingard was absolutely shocking. They were just booting him from one side of the pitch to the other. So I think, there's no point pretending we're not heavily biased in this because this is an England podcast and we love England enough to start an England podcast, Chris. But it can't be tempered with any sort of rooting for the plucky underdog or I'm glad they did well. I'm glad we absolutely banjoed them and they absolutely deserve to be banjoed, but that's to one side. Chris, we've got to cover it, so let's cover it quickly before we talk about good stuff. Team Sheet Gate. You have 60 seconds to tell me everything you want to say about it. Go.
Okay, right. Firstly, I think it's very irritating that a lot of the national journalists who are over in Russia have quickly fallen on the defence that it is somehow their journalistic duty to report on something that, frankly, their public clearly doesn't give a toss about. And I think the team sheet was acquired through means that I don't really approve of, but more importantly than that, I think it was published because it could be published, not it should be published. I don't think anybody wanted it, and I think the circling of the wagons amongst the press corps over in Russia has been pretty shameful, and the fact that it was there, to me, is not a good enough reason, and I think it says a lot about the instincts of some of these people.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I understand why it was published. I understand it was an open training session. I understand that it's literally an opportunity for photos to be taken. But you could publish that same story and blur out the names on the pad and still have it as England number 2 in huge blunder, etc., etc. And then also get a bit of kudos for possibly getting the team right on the back pages. But
yeah, exactly what, like, you could literally print a picture of a football pitch with the team on it, and it wouldn't have had the same response. Because I think that between the lines, the angry reaction from England supporters has as much to do with the fact that it was a story about the press picking up the team as it was about the team itself.
Yeah,
but they reported the team for Tunisia the better part of a week before that game. Nobody batted an eyelid.
But yeah, it was the nature of it, and it was also I just think, I mean, Twitter can be a bit of an echo chamber, but if you look at some of the ratios, a lot of these journalists were getting for their very, very clever and well put together tweets about how, tweeting about the weather, could that be seen as unpatriotic? Which I found each and every one of them individually hilarious. But, you look at some of the ratios they were getting on them. Ollie Holt had, I think it ended up being about 1,200 replies to a tweet he got about 38 RTs on. So you'd hope that there would start to be an understanding that public opinion is changing, but me and you know there absolutely won't be, and come the next Euros, exactly the same thing will happen again.
No, there won't be, because it's about instinct. It was a story about journalism.
Yeah.
And that is what these people care about.
The real real sort of pathetic ones in my mind. I mean, the level of sarcasm coming out was at times pathetic, really, because it was also in some cases showed a complete lack of understanding of what they were being told by the audience they were specifically talking to in the format they were saying it, i.e. on Twitter. But anyway, that's another story. Can we talk about football?
Yeah, something's happened, hasn't it?
Yes, yeah. So let's get straight to it. England lineup. I think we've spoken enough about the team sheet being leaked, but I think we would have guessed anyway that obviously Loftus-Cheek was going to come in for Ali. I think he absolutely deserved and merited that place. And, it was right that I think Sterling started again and got another go. I think it was right that Young started again and got another go. I think it was absolutely 100% right that Trippier kept that place. So no complaints with the lineup, really, Chris.
No complaints and no surprises, really. The slightly raised eyebrow came when Sterling kept his place despite not being on the team sheet.
Yes, yeah. Well, that was it. I would like nothing more than to think it was a huge double bluff, but who knows? Right, let's get into it. Let's have some fun. So England start very, very much on the front foot. Panama start by punching Jesse Lingard in the face, and it felt quite positive from the outset. And we were talking a little bit off there. There was definitely a feeling. I mean, I sent you a message after 5 minutes where we'd had a couple of fouls, Lingard punched in the face, and a wild Panama hack wide from 25 yards. I sent you a message saying I think we've seen pretty much everything we're going to see from Panama. What we really needed to see then was what England were going to do about it. And that corner kick, again, you could see the patterns, you could see the routines, couldn't you? This wasn't a line of players just running, hoping to get on the ball. This was players taking that position. Ashley Young blocking the defender off just for that fractional moment to give John Stones the room. And then, I have to say this, I mean, we waxed lyrical about Harry Kane's header. What a header that is from John Stones, Chris.
Yeah, really lovely finish. And it was no accident that he was right on the penalty spot, I don't think. I think that's all part of the indicators that there was a plan behind it all. And given the attention that was being given to our players at that point in time, I'm pretty impressed that England were able to get Stones free to the extent that they did. He was in miles of space. And he buried the header. Yeah.
I mean, it was great to see, wasn't it, to be frank, because like John Stones he's had a difficult season club wise because he was in really good form and then he was in bad form, then he was out the team, then he came back in and has struggled a little bit. Now he's dealing with all sorts of rumours about whether Pep thinks he's the answer long term and all this sort of thing. I thought he was excellent, not just the 2 goals. We'll get onto the second, but I thought he did very well today. I thought that England back three against a really overly physical Panama attack who offered nothing else really stood up pretty well. And I don't want to use the phrase balls because it's just horribly misogynistic, but they all showed some balls, really, for want of a better phrase. And yeah, it was just a really good goal, just a very, very pleasant goal. And then Trippier picks out Lingard's brilliant run.
Trippier's contribution so far in this World Cup has been one of ambition and precision and end product. He's doing really well for us, and Lingard's ability to get across his markers in that situation is what won the penalty for us.
At half time, they made quite a good point about Trippier, which is that I mean, a lot of Spurs fans are sort of can't really believe what they're seeing, but they made the point that with international football being that little bit slower, he's got a little bit more time on the ball. He's got a little bit more in front of him without the sort of harem-scarum press of his own team all over the place. And he seems to be finding his feet and he seems to be happy. And that ball was top class. That was in terms of being a wing back, that is a top class piece of play to drop off short there, spot the run from Lingard, who was in that first half. I mean, like, it's an obscene thing to say about Jesse Lingard, but he was unplayable for a chunk of that first half. And the foul was just, again, it was just everything Panama are, really. It was 2 penalties, wasn't it? It was Escobar came across high and into his midriff. Torres came into the side of the leg and took him out, and then they still had the audacity to both complain about it.
Well, yeah, and complain about everything else as well.
Yeah. Talk me through the penalty.
He caught it sweet.
Confidence.
Yeah, I think in spite of the delay that came with, all the reviewing of a decision that the referee got correct and so on, and then the delaying tactics by Panama's players as well, even after the VAR check. I want to say it took nerves of steel to put that away, but I just don't think he even thinks like that.
No, I don't either.
It's just utter confidence from the moment the whistle goes for the penalty. He knows that he's going to score.
I'll tell you something else as well. I think he knew exactly where he was going to put that from the minute the ref first gave the penalty.
Yeah, never wavered from it either.
I think he knew top left was exactly where he was going. And I would imagine, looking at the way he takes the second penalty, it's top left he's been practising for the week, and he's come into this game going, if I get one, that's where it's going.
He can carry on with that because there's no stopping either of those penalties.
No. You see, this is the thing about penalties, is that there are certain areas of the goal, there are certain ways to take a penalty where they are unsavable, and that there's not a goalkeeper in the world would have saved that.
Even if he knew where it was going.
Yeah. So 2-0 up. England then had a little spell of little bit of possession, and I thought they were nice and calm. It certainly didn't feel like the adrenaline was getting to them, did it, Chris?
No, not at all. It was very measured. It was a nice, relaxed performance. I actually think the third goal possibly changed the course of the game a little bit. Because we could easily have gone in at 2-0. Because we weren't really busting a gut for the third goal. And it kind of came out of nowhere a little bit, and we'll talk about it shortly. But the way that England were happy to just play the ball around and just take the sting out of the game, the heat would have played a big part of that as well.
Yeah.
And it was just a little spell of 10, 15 minutes where England were happy to have the ball, slow the pace a little bit, stop getting kicked around briefly. And then we scored. And I think once you hit 3-0 at that point in the game, then you can start thinking about 5 and 6. And it was nice to see that we were able to go on and do that.
Yeah, so the third goal, Scholes just lays it into Giroud, knocks it back, and Scholes puts it around the Tunisian keeper, and, we have a jolly good night in France. No, it wasn't that goal, but it looked extremely like it. Brilliant goal. Absolutely brilliant goal. And I thought what was so impressive here was just before that, England have a spell and switched it absolutely brilliantly from one side of the pitch to the other, completely pulled the defence over, completely made the space for exactly that move and to give Lingard that pocket of space outside the area. He was, earlier on in the move, he gets the ball initially, turns and plays it into, it was Sterling, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And he was absolutely desperate to get on the ball at this point in the game. He was all over the place. I mean, it's that 30-minute spell is, I'll hold my hands up and say I like Lingard a lot, and I've spoke on this podcast about how much I like Lingard, but that's certainly the best I've ever seen him play. I mean, I don't see him play all his club football, but he was absolutely terrific. And when the ball came back to him, Chris, it was one of them. You knew it was in the minute it left his foot, didn't you? Yeah,
100%. It had the right shape on it. It had enough power, and the placement was just perfect, wasn't it? And there's no stopping that. And thank you, TV camera angle, for showing us from the moment it was struck that it was going in.
Yeah. And it was one of those goals that benefited from a couple of replays as well, because there was a lovely one behind the goal, but that top down, when you get a strike from distance, that top down view is absolutely lovely when you have one that bends a bit like that. And it was, absolutely lovely stuff. it was Scholes v Tunisia. It's our Cole versus Sweden moment potentially from this World Cup. Very, very happy, and I think you're exactly right to sort of identify, Chris, that I think there was a spell where it looked like we might have been happy to go in at 2-0 at half-time to go and get that third goal. It was nothing short of what we deserved, I don't think.
No, I don't think there was anything about this game that we took away that we didn't deserve to take with us. No. It was a really very assured, very clinical England performance.
Lingard scored sort of technically the best goal of the game, but then we scored my favourite goal of the game. Really, well, my favourite goal of the first half. We'll get on to the second half. Brilliant move from a free kick, straight off the training ground. You could tell, it wasn't just the TV cameras that picked up on the little playbook discussion from Jordan Henderson before, but you could tell something was brewing. And I thought it was a great routine. The little spin off, the ball in, was it Maguire's header back across goal? I just wish Sterling could have finished it. If he'd have got that header, that completely changes the course of his World Cup.
And its goal of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing I said to you in the WhatsApp group, Chris, I love the fact that Stones' role in that goal was to play poacher, because it's Kane there who gets the ball across. It's Kane who they're watching. So that opens up all the space in the middle, and it's Stones who's spun off and snuck round the back to play the Harry Kane role. And I just think that it's just properly clever.
And had the chops to finish it as well. It's all well and good in being there, but it's a decent finish into the roof of the net, that.
It is, and it's just, you see, this is the feel of England under Southgate. I'm still, I'm not getting carried away. I'm still not full gas.
All right,
yet.
mate.
But I think you just cannot fault the way he has handled the last 2 months. And I mean that the naming of the squad, the sort of preparation games, the 2 games we've had so far, and to see, they were giving a lot of the credit to Steve Holland, weren't they? But to see England even try something like that, rather than lumping it towards the big man. And if Panama did do any scouting of us, they'll have watched that Tunisia game and realised that one of our strategies was going to be to use our height at set pieces. So to try something different and it end up with a header from the smallest player in our squad, it's just magnificent, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a terrific move, and we're slightly underselling it a little bit, I think, because it wasn't the kind of move where you hit the big man and then head it across goal and there's an extra pass in there. It was, getting on for 4 or 5 little passes within this. And it was just perfect all the way along until the finish, which wasn't an easy finish, and it was a decent save. But no, we got Sterling in right in front of the goalkeeper inside the 6-yard box, completely unmarked.
And the other thing I should say as well, I don't actually blame Sterling for missing that, because he's got a boot coming about an inch from his eye. It's a lot to ask for him to. Just wrap that in as if without a care in the world, if you know what I mean. Life doesn't work that way, unfortunately, and I can understand why he missed that from being in that situation myself once or twice. And that is why you have Stones spinning off and coming around the back. That is why you have somebody who specifically plays the role of poacher, isn't it?
Yeah. I doubt very much that there's anybody listening to this who doesn't remember the Argentina free kick against us in '98. This would have been better.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And it did result in a goal, but it needed Sterling to be the one to finish it to have been perfection, I think.
Yeah. So 4-0, visibly excited. Coming on to half time, looking forward to the bag of Whisper Bites I've got tucked away in the fridge to tuck into in celebration, and we get not so much a stone wall penalty as a penalty squared, as the very root of all penalties. Just stupidity. The camera focused on the John Stones one, which I might add was also a penalty because the lad spun him round and pulled his shirt. But he literally, at one point, he had his hands together around Harry Kane's back.
Yep.
And then when Harry Kane started to wriggle free, he grabbed his shirt for purchase. It's like, well, there's 3 penalties there.
Yeah, well, actually, funnily enough, I think there's 3 penalties for the first goal as well.
I mean, naive. The thing is, you can sort of say, well, it's naive defending, it's poor defending, and they've not played a striker perhaps of Harry Kane's quality. No, it's not. That's been their plan from the start. They're just trying and bully, pull, push, and just hope that the referee's looking elsewhere, looking at something else. And I was so glad that the referee gave the second one. So glad, because he could have, let's be honest, there are some referees we've seen in this World Cup who wouldn't have done, would they, Chris?
No, particularly at 4-0 as well. And it's I don't like to think of referees having an easy get out in these situations and taking the path of least resistance. But with 4-0 being the scoreline at the time, there are referees who wouldn't have given that.
Particularly, literally, in a minute into, injury time before half time as well.
Yeah.
So 5-0, and that you can talk about the figures all you want. You can talk about it's been God knows how long since we were this many goals up and all this sort of thing. But what I want to focus on really is that first half of football. I don't think we actually played as well in the first half as we did against Tunisia. The difference was, I think we were just far more clinical, and that in itself is the most positive thing for me, besides the goals, really, that the performance was there. So, yeah, lovely stuff, really. No complaints at half-time, Chris?
No, not at all. Actually, I think they're probably on a par with Tunisia. I think the finishing is, by definition, a part of the performance. But also, you don't beat anybody 5-0 in 45 minutes at this World Cup without playing really well. I don't care that it's Panama.
No.
And I think that the character that was shown by England in the first half and the fact that they were able to execute the plan to that extent, and then to freewheel the last 20 minutes of that half and go on and get up to 5 goals was really very impressive indeed.
Yeah, it's almost as if it's coming home. So then we get into the second half, and I think the second half played out as a lot of people who've been watching football for an awful long time will have expected it to. I mean, it's almost impossible to A, keep the tempo up, and B, match what you do in that first half. It was an exercise in avoiding injury, in trying to keep hold of the ball, in just sort of gentle probing, and that the ball retention philosophy that Gareth Southgate is so keen to employ, really. And we scored my favourite goal of the game. And I tell you why it's my favourite goal of the game. I'm not being contrary or anything like that. I just think that the one quality I want my striker to have over all else is luck. And that is sometimes finding yourself in a certain position. It's sometimes taking advantage of a little stumble here or there. It's however it comes. If you've got a lucky striker, absolutely perfect. And you've got a striker there who scored 2 penalties in the first half, and he'd been relatively, Chris, uninvolved in the game as well. It's not, it was a funny sort of performance from Kane in that he didn't really need to do any more than he did. He did just about enough. Yeah. And then obviously the shot comes in, hits his heel and flies in. When it's going for you, when the luck's on your side, when finally England are having the sort of bounce and break of the ball because we've actually earned it, rather than we're sat in a pub wishing for it against a dismal Algerian team, it feels pretty good to me, Chris. Yeah,
it was really pleasing, the second half performance, I think. It was nice and comfortable. I don't think that England stretched themselves in any fashion at all, and continued to just kind of get the job done, really. And I think a good performance where you're 5-0 up and you get a clip of the heel like that, as you say, it's very different to hoping for it at 0-0, and you don't get the rub of the green in the same way. Part of the luck was the fact that he was able to be onside, of course, because you're not getting away with even the most marginal offside at the moment. So at this point, it was just all going for us. Loftus-Cheek's shot was certainly not a threat on goal, and it caught Kane and deceived the goalkeeper. And at 6-0, I was finally able to relax a little bit.
I like to say my sort of Sunday league, Saturday league, 5-a-side, 6-a-side, 7-a-side career has probably gone on for about 15 years too long. But I played to an okay standard for quite a while and what have you. And I would be, I mean, I've had several that I've chased a keeper down and they've hit my knee and gone in. I've had a few where it's just, defenders completely sliced its clearance and it's ended up with me. And let me tell you, if anything, they're even more satisfying. Because, a goal that you haven't earned, trust me, is just as good as a goal that you have. So, I was really, really pleased to see that one going, because it sort of, as I said, it shows that for once we're getting a break of the ball. But sort of black mark, if you like, but I don't really care. 12 minutes to go, switched off at a set play, and Beloy, I mean, it was a good finish as well, it should be said.
Really good finish.
And Panama score, but my take on this, Chris, is exactly what I said to Dan Story, really, in that, 80 minutes in 30-degree heat, 6-0 up, played very well, passed the ball around, we've been kicked from pillar to post, not really asked, to be honest. But, did it worry you, Chris?
Don't worry me, I'm fuming, though. There's no reason to be worried about it. Despite being very happy to go into this game taking a 1-0 and walking away and going to Belgium with 6 points, kept to 6-0 and concede, and I'm absolutely steaming about it. Partly because of the defending, but partly just because there's something unclean about a 1 in a scoreline like this, isn't there?
Well, you see, with 6, the problem is with 6 is the aesthetically pleasing scoreline is 6-2. I think
6-0, mate. That's what you want.
You want 6-0 or 6-2. 6-1 is neither here nor there, really.
Anything
it's like
is bad.
7-0s are always bad. I think 7-1 looks better. There's certain score lines that just feel aesthetically a bit better, but no, I can't get myself worked up, really. But full time, 6-1, Kane hat-trick, players are buzzing. I think my favourite moment of the World Cup was watching the bench watch Lingard do keepy-ups with his socks.
Yeah.
All of them smiling, all of them relaxed, all of them happy. No potato-faced former striker sat there stroking his chin, eyeing the camera or anything like that. It's being an England fan is a good place to be at the moment, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it is. And you know what? We've talked about this game in isolation today. I think it's really important to take the whole achievement as one. Tunisia and Panama will not be the best opponents we'll play in this World Cup. We know we've got better to come in the next 2 games. 100%. Both of those games better than these 2 teams. But we've watched England teams go into tournaments and fluff their lines.
Oh, no.
And not score goals. Struggle to beat really poor opposition. Probably not as poor as we faced today, but certainly as poor, if not worse, than Tunisia.
Yeah.
And we've gone there, and we've got our little bit of well-deserved and well-earned good fortune at the end of the Tunisia game. I certainly think we deserve the credit for it, but you don't always get the result from that. So, little slice of luck in getting the win there, but we got the job done. And probably not a great deal of pressure on the game today, but we won our first 2 games and we qualified for the second round very comfortably. And we shouldn't turn our nose up at that.
No, we shouldn't. And, I genuinely mean it. It's a good place to be. And I'm not full Southgate, but I still think he looks a little bit like a horse that's been told its mum's been shot as he stands on the sideline sometimes. But I would far rather look at Gareth Southgate and look at this England team and look at the bench enjoying himself than seeing far better technical players punt the ball over 50 yards out to a winger and watch them continually go out for throw-ins. I would far rather watch this team than sit there thinking, well, what can that one striker do for us that we're putting all our stock and all our hope in? And you're exactly right, Chris. You've got to look at our recent history. The Euros, the World Cups, games like Algeria, games like Iceland, games like Russia in the last World Cup where we couldn't see it out and lost that in the last Euros and lost that equaliser. This is a world of improvement, and if England go out to the first good team they play, this is still a world of improvement, isn't it?
Certainly is, without a doubt. And scraping through the group and then losing to somebody not very good in the second round, I would have considered a bit of a failure, given that we're giving Tunisia and Panama due credit here, but they are poor opposition. But we have dismantled that poor opposition, and that's an improvement. And wherever we go from here, we might not end up delighted, but I think there's certainly an argument that we've done much better than we have in recent tournaments. There are 3 little I told you so's that I want to pick up on as well.
Excellent, get them in.
Yeah, well, number 1, there wasn't a lot of this, but there were a few mentions of the fact that England had decided not to train at the stadium, and that the heat was going to be an issue. And isn't it terrible what a poor decision they've made there? I told you so. The second one is just the Harry Kane golden boot thing. And I think it's really important. You mentioned the striker there that we always end up relying on, and it's fascinating to watch the striker who we're finally not asking to do it all by himself is performing. He's getting the goals and is now leading the race for the golden boot in the World Cup. And 5 goals in 2 games is
it's almost as if we got
start.
It's almost as if we got it all wrong in previous tournaments, Chris.
Yeah, funny that. And I think a lot of it comes down to the players as well. And it's connected to my third point, really, which is we probably have had better individual players over the years. But if you came into this World Cup thinking this was the worst England squad that's ever gone to a major tournament, you want to have a look at yourself.
Yeah.
Because it when it was announced, it wasn't by any stretch the worst. And it certainly doesn't look it now. And we may lose to Belgium and go out in the second round. But it's already outperformed previous squads.
I think the disconnect comes because there has been moments in time where England have had a far, far stronger first 11, but even then we've not had the performance and we've not had the depth. So as soon as somebody comes out of that first 11, it's like a house of cards. Whereas what we've got this time is lesser players individually, apart from Kane and Sterling on his day, but a far better team ethic, a far better way of playing, and just a better feeling. This team, it's going to take an awful lot from here for this team to do anything but come home with their heads held high, and I think that's a nice change from previous years. Final thing, Chris, before we move on: first or second in the group?
Don't care.
Right answer.
Absolutely first, if it's there for us. I want us to go for first, but I really don't care if we don't get it.
It's momentum, isn't it?
Yeah. The one thing I don't want to happen is, in any fashion, playing for second.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't make any sense to. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a good chance I would make at least 10 changes for the game on Thursday.
Would you?
But that's just common sense, and that's exactly what Belgium will do as well. But I don't really care who we play, because I don't truly believe we're going to win the World Cup. I just want us to keep the momentum going. And I said the limit of my ambition really was just to go out to a better side for the first time in God knows how long. And I still feel like that. If that's one side of the draw, fair enough. If it's the other side of the draw, fair enough.
Yeah, exactly.
If we, just imagine for a second coming out of this group with 9 points.
Yeah.
And you're honestly telling me people would sit here and go, oh no, well actually, I'd have quite liked to finish second. Shut up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the level of ambition to go on and actually win the tournament, I think, is a big part of why I'm not too fussed. I still think quarterfinal would be an achievement, and I fear absolutely nobody in Group H.
No.
So that's your quarterfinal. If we can live up to that, that's your quarterfinal there. And if you're picking and choosing who you're playing from the quarterfinal onwards in a World Cup, then you're mad.
Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? I would, in a perverse sort of way, I would really like to see this side tested, because at the moment they've got a free roll of the dice. It doesn't. I mean, they could have won 9-0 today, and we're all happy and we're all jumping around. But nobody is realistically saying, "Well, that's it. We're going to win it."
No,
nobody is. But what we are saying is, it's just nice to be pleased with England. It's just nice to be happy about it and be hopeful and be positive. So I would like to see them go up against a Germany or a Brazil, because I can at least go into that game and go, if we win, fabulous. If we lose and play really well, which I think we would, I think this team will always have a go.
Yep.
Then fabulous progress. So yeah, it's an absolute nonsense to have a preference, in my personal opinion, other than winning your group and going. I mean, to win 3 group games in a row, that was the first time I think we've won 2 group games in a tournament for 30 years, is it?
Something like that.
2 consecutive group games in a tournament. I think it's about something like that.
Yeah, 2 consecutive is certainly a long time.
Yeah. So if somebody said, well, you know, you can win a 3rd one, but what you really want to do here is chuck it, lose 1-0 or lose 2-1, and you'll have a much safer route. No, it's a World Cup. If you're going to test yourself, the time is now, isn't it?
Absolutely is. And you get to the quarterfinal, and what you play on paper has already proved itself to be worthy of the final 8.
Yeah,
there are. I'm still very much of the opinion that there are no easy games at this World Cup, and Russia have had an easy game, and now we've had an easy game. But getting off the mark in those games is what made them easy.
Yeah.
And Belgium, of course, as well against Tunisia, and it's getting those goals to get yourself in front that make them easy. Yeah. Quarterfinal onwards, there definitely aren't any, because at the very least, we're playing someone who's upset Brazil or Germany or someone of that ilk.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who we play. We've got to beat everyone. And we'll probably go out quarterfinal, if not before, I think. Doing ourselves justice is still the level of my ambition, I think.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we've done. So, there we go. 39 minutes of rather excited England talk. Just what you want on a Monday morning.
Yeah, and recorded before the second game of the day, because we're just a little bit pleased.
Yes, yeah. Well, but I think we've every right to be, Chris.
Yeah.
And I think you can be happy and want to cheerlead a little bit without going over the top, which I think is exactly where we are at the moment. So why not? Indulge yourself. Put a little flag on the car. Tell them I said it's all right. Right then, we will be back with a pod at some point.
We will.
Don't know when. So we'll let you know anyway. You can find us and the feed on at Sphinx FTBL, is it, Chris, on Twitter?
Yep, everywhere.
I am at David Hartrick. Chris is it at CMNE? Is it just at CMNE FTBL?
It's Chris MNE.
Chris MNE. There you go.
That's one of the few Twitter handles I haven't had.
Yeah. And we shall speak to you, and hopefully we will be just as excited. So, see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.